Hey guys, just a reminder, if you want to hear all of these wonderful B Plus podcast episodes completely ad-free, make sure you head over to Patreon or Podbean, where we are the featured podcast this week. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month up to $10 a month, where anything you want to help us with, it really helps out. It's going to help us grow the site. It's going to help us redesign some things, and everything that we get through this and through the advertising as well is all going straight back into the podcast so that we can get Aussie Graps out there for the rest of the world to hear about, for the rest of the world to see, so we can grow this mission of watch global, support local, and build indie wrestling. So if you want to be a part of that and get some really cool rewards like call-in shows, bonus episodes, ad-free like I mentioned, then head over to patreon.com/theb+ and subscribe today.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Hold one, arm drag.
You're not good at this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon.
You just made the list.
Oh my God!
Sorry, no speak English.
Dummy. Goodbye and good night. Hold two, arm bar.
It's still real to me, damn it!
Dummy.
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
Hold three, Lamas covers, three-handle family Gradunzo.
Mamma mia!
And now,
Unchained.media presents the B Plus Podcast with your host, Greg Unchained.
It's me, Austin! It was me all along, Austin!
number four, armbar.
I will never retire!
I still got 200 more. I got 200 more holes to list.
Alright, welcome ladies and gentlemen and non-binary friends, and welcome to another episode of the B Plus Podcast. I'm your host, Big Boy Mikey, and usually either Greg or myself would start by saying, I'm your host, Big Boy Mikey, and it's Saturday, you know what that means. It's time for yada yada yada, the week in NXT cast, whatever. But however, this week we're just doing a little bit something a little different for the B Plus listeners. We're attempting our first ever episode of the Lucha Cast. I don't know if that's the right title or not. I think we can work on a better title. And I am bringing in a new voice to the B Plus team, all the way from Edinburgh in Scotland. I give you Liam Stewart. Liam, welcome to the B Plus Airways.
Thank you very much for that fantastic intro, Mikey. I've got to say, I was panicking you were going to say Glasgow there. Everyone I talk to seems to know Glasgow and Edinburgh more than Scotland, so it's glad that you got it right. I'm excited to finally get to sit down and talk about some Lucha Libre with someone, because my co-hosts both don't really watch any Mexican wrestling or even any mainstream US Lucha Libre. So I'm really excited to sit down and get to talk about the wrestling that I love.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the same with me with the B Plus team. Like, most of the crew, they'll know the Rey Mysterios, and they'll know the Pentas and all that from Impact and Major League and all that. But when I talk about, so I usually do a bit of a spiel on CMLL on my New Japan cast, because our New Japan cast, we cover New Japan, Ring of Honor, Rev Pro, and CMLL, that King of Sports universe. And whenever I discuss it, I kind of feel like Greg is just like, I don't know any of these names that you're talking about. But I enjoy your enthusiasm. And so I thought, you know what? I want to find someone that is enthusiastic about Lucha Libre. So so I'm glad I found you, man. Like, do you want to tell the B Plus universe a little bit about you, a little bit about what got you into Lucha Libre? And
yeah, sounds like a good idea. So I took quite I guess the traditional route to start with, and that my first exposure, like I assume a lot of sort of British people was for Lucha Libre, was Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, sort of 2000, 2004 WWE, that sort of run. And I was always encapsulated by their wrestling style. And it was actually my dad who pointed out that this was Lucha Libre. You know, this was free fight. This was the style of wrestling in Mexico. And after begging my dad to take me to Mexico over and over, and him pointing out that Mexico's really far away and expensive, we settled for him showing me some old WCW Psychosis tapes. So after being encapsulated by the mask, the hair, you know, the look of Lucha Libre, which I think really encapsulates a lot of younger viewers, that kind of love got put on hold due to like inaccessibility for a while. So I was still watching WWE, you know, but you'd have to settle for like Super Crazy and Psychosis, you know, that, oh look, they're Mexican, that's their gimmick, ignore the fact they're really talented in-ring performers. And then over the last, I'd say 3-4 years, I've properly had the ability to deep dive back into it, you know, with the internet and the sheer accessibility of even older tapes. And just guys right now like Pentagon, Ray Phoenix have completely encapsulated like my love of wrestling. Caristico and Volador Jr., some of my favourite luchadors of all time. And just going back and learning about the history, there's something about the idea that, you know, nobody knows who these people are. They hide behind the mask. Funny story, I was at a thing in Manchester called Wrestling Media Con. And basically it was like a gathering of all, you know, like Dave Meltzer, Inside the Ropes, Cultaholic, all these like internet-based wrestling personalities and reporters. And Rev Pro put on a show, the British J-Cup. And two of the guys they had over for that were Flamita and Bandido. And both of those guys, as well as Jushin Thunder Liger, happened to be staying at the same hotel as me. So, you know, no level of marking out internally while trying to keep a straight face when you're sat in a travel lodge in Manchester eating your breakfast, and at the table opposite you, with no mask on, is Bandido, Flamita, and Jushin Thunder Liger. And I'm just sat there like, I've seen their face. Oh my God, I've seen their face. And I was just stood there, and they saw me with my wrestling merch on and came over and said hi, and I was just like, oh no, I'm not going to say I know who you are. Just going to play it off. So, yeah, it's been a roller coaster journey. The last few years have been spent mainly watching sort of whatever was readily available, and then over the last, I'd say, 18 months, sort of CMML Friday weekly, catch up on, you know, whatever the internet seems to recommend each week, and then obviously watching AAA, and actually really enjoying Impact recently with a lot of the sort of AAA guys and Lucha Libre guys in general. They're bringing over like Ace Austin, who just debuted there 2 weeks ago now, has pretty much stolen my dream childhood gimmick of being Gambit from X-Men. So, yeah. That's my story, man. What about yourself?
For me, it's going to be very, very stock standard. I'm a mid-90s WCW boy. I grew up on WCW, so my old man was a huge NWA WCW fan. So I got into the likes of Four Horsemen and Ron Simmons when he won his first title, and like Sting and all that. And then, watching WCW came with, I guess the first one that really came to WCW was Conan. But then when I had the spikes of the Eddies, the Rays, the Psychosis, La Parka, even the Japanese, Mexican crossovers like the Ultimate Dragons, Liga, those sort of guys, and I'm just sitting and going, this is amazing. Like there's something so enthralling about the mask there, and like the history, like you said, like there's something so magical about like the history of their families and stuff as well. That like, you know, like some of these families go back, 60, 70 years. Like someone like a Del Santo or like a Blue Demon and that, they go back generations, and it's just insane. And then like you said, I'm sort of the same. Like due to the inaccessibility for a while, it was hard to really watch much lucha. It was really what WWE was giving us, and a little bit of Ring of Honor that I was watching at the time, and I guess Impact that had a little bit of lucha sort of in there some ways. Like kind of like El Generico was kind of like a lucha character there, and And
Yeah.
so things like that. But yeah, then once the world of YouTube came alive, that you could literally search every match from from the 70s all the way through to CMLL doing 3 live shows a week, AAA, The Crash. There's so much, and yeah, like it's getting back to a really high standard. Like you said, the leading man in that is Pentagon. Penta and Phoenix both, and maybe Almaz. Maybe Almaz on the main WWE roster, I guess, has something to do with the re-emergence of Lucha. But I really believe it's Penta. I think Penta is the best Lucha guy in the world right now, hands down. Sorry to Phoenix.
I think he has that style where a lot of the criticism of Lucha Libre from non-believers, that might be a bit for non-fans, is the idea that that came around from like Orton and everyone like that. Oh, it's just flippy shit. And I think Pentagon's style is that very grounded Lucha Libre, that very grounded like cruiserweight, if you want to go like Western term, like style, but also like the face paint and the mask. Kids are gonna love it. I've always said that he would be the sort of guy you put him in main roster WWE, and he'd be like world champion within a year because his merch sales alone would convince him to be pushed. Because wrestling fans would love him for being such a talented wrestler, but also his aesthetic is so cool that if Sin Cara, like Caristico sold, I think it was something like 1.5 million masks in WWE over his short time there. Like Pentagon would sell them to 45-year-old guys as well. He's that cool. Like he's a phenomenal performer, and as someone who's a bit concerned about AEW, not due to anything like they're taking contracts or whatever, just because I had a problem with New Japan for a while with the Western fan base, because the whole like too sweet whoop whoop 1 2 sweet chants. I found their fans quite militant, and if you didn't enjoy something and you mentioned you didn't like it, you were wrong. Like I've never been the biggest fan of the Young Bucks, and I've been abused many times over Twitter by what is now like the elite fan base because of that. But the Lucha Bros signing for AEW is going to be enough to make me watch the Double or Nothing show, give it a fresh chance. So I was going to say, I think it's Pentagon, Phoenix, and in terms of, I think the next breakout star we're going to see in the likes of like Andrade is probably going to be Shane Strickland. And I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit more when we talk about the Lucha Underground sort of contract situation and lawsuits. But I think his now free agent availability and very likelihood of signing with NXT is going to be another great marker for making more people watch Lucha Libre, because they'll see his style, see the way he moves on the ropes, and they'll go, oh, where can I see more of this? And that's when your CMML and AAA will be like, oh, look, and Lucha Underground, shoving all their tapes on YouTube for free. Look, we had this guy once, MLW, come and watch it. So it's an exciting time to be a Lucha fan.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I get a little bit scared with the WWE side of things, like not being one of those anti-WWE guys. There are some things I thoroughly enjoy, there's some things I don't. Someone like Grand Metalik, 6 years ago, he was probably one of the best guys at CMLL, tearing it up, and he's part of the most annoying team in WWE, and I'm like, it makes me sad because that's literally a Lucha house party, and it's just like, but they're just so cheeseball, and it's just like, you could have just let Metalik do his thing. Like, I just want to see one match between Metalik and Almaz before either of them ever leave, or I just want that one-on-one. Even if it's in the stupid Andre the Giant Battle Royal for 2 minutes, I just want them to have a face-off and go, holy shit, we're both at WrestleMania. Hello, guys. Yeah. Like, I haven't seen you for 6 years, but
we have a ongoing joke over at the Developmental Podcast where I stand by that the Lucha House Party is still more enjoyable on weekly television than the Revival. And it's got to the point where I genuinely think I'm going to have to marry Kalisto at some point, because we have this thing where I get really annoyed when people misuse the term underrated, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, you get the yearly Wrestling Observer newsletter fan voted awards, and there's the most underrated wrestler, and Finn Balor won it this year, which means I think it was like something like 80% of the people that voted think that people think Finn Balor's not a good wrestler, because that's what underrated is. It's not about where you get used by the company. That's underutilized. Yeah. Underrated is people going, oh, he's bad, when he's really good. So I stood by and I argued with this guy on a wrestling show. I say argued, like politely discussed, like wrestling fans do, for about 40 minutes why Kalisto was a good wrestler and why Lindsay Dorado and Grand Metalik were also good. And that ended with me showing him the beautiful Hurricane Rana Grand Metalik does, where he runs up when the opponent's on the apron, Hurricane Rana's them over the ropes and lands on his feet. Well, I showed him a compilation of that, and then after that he agreed Grand Metalik is fantastic and should be doing a lot more than, firing around with a Vuvuzela.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with you there. It's funny though, like, people don't understand the connections to characters and stuff. So Kalisto, before we start getting into the real story, like I love being able to break this sort of stuff. Like, Kalisto has a connection to Penta Jr. So we've already talked about Penta Jr. Kalisto has a connection to Penta Jr. in the fact that in AAA, when Pentagon Jr. sort of was coming up the ranks, he was feuding with Octagon, and they needed a Octagon Jr. to face Pentagon Jr. as like part of the story, and Kalisto was the Octagon Jr. for a bit, and so he was the bad guy against Pentagon Jr. Sorry, the good guy, and Pentagon Jr. was the Rudo at the time. So there's actually history between Kalisto and Penta Jr. Then people like he kind of like, how do you know that? I'm just like it all connects back down to Mexico. There's 2 or 3 major companies and everything has interconnected somehow in the past. But Kalisto is definitely underrated. I love that guy.
Oh, it's fantastic. So I guess at the 16-minute mark, we should head along and start talking about what is arguably the biggest piece of news in all of Mexico and Lucha Libre right now.
Yeah.
Which is the announcement that the former 2-time UFC heavyweight champion, Cain Vasquez, has announced via press conference that he will be making his in-ring debut in April? August? August. Yeah. At Triple Mania, which is a huge coup for AAA. I watch UFC, but I'm not the biggest UFC guy. So you might know a little bit more about this than me. But from what I could gather, he last fought in the UFC in February, got knocked out in 30 seconds. So he's doing I guess if you want to compare it to WWE again, he's doing the Ronda Rousey of joining professional wrestling at the right time.
Yep.
And he's got, the main comparison I could see when I looked at his profile and fighting style is he's 6'1" and 240 pounds, which is the exact same build as El Messias Mil Muertes. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to perform in ring. So I'll pass over to you. You might know a little bit more about this than me, because both AAA and UFC are kind of my lesser areas of knowledge today.
Yeah, well, UFC, I don't really have much. Don't have any interest in UFC. I find some bouts very exciting. I get frustrated when I spend all day at a pub and UFC fight lasts like 2 minutes, and I'm like, cool, that was fantastic. No, it's a very interesting coup, because only just under a year ago, he was actually at the Performance Center, WWE Performance Center, training to become a pro wrestler, and yeah.
Oh, really?
And he at the time he came out saying he'd loved this since he was a kid. The standard UFC guy coming into WWE, into wrestling. And at the time, so he said something like that. And over the last, I don't know when this quote came out or when it happened, but he kind of made a statement like Lucha Libre was fake, which pissed off a lot of the main guys in the play. So when they revealed him at this at the press conference for Triple Mania, they gave 3 wrestlers sort of a face to face with him. I guess all 3 of them challenged him to a match at Triple Mania, being Psycho Clown, Texano Jr. and Pentagon Jr. And we now know it's Pentagon Jr. So Pentagon Jr. versus Cain Velasquez at Triple Mania 27. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, they've still got, 4 months until it's about the 3rd of August. So about 4 months to really get him into ring ready. I mean, it didn't take Ronda long.
Yeah.
Other guys like Filthy Tom Lawler and Matt Riddle and that, they crossed over very differently. But yeah, for Cain Velasquez, I guess, like you said, the best comparison is going to be Ronda.
What I'm going to be interested about most is, obviously, like you said, it is Penta that we're going to get at Triple Mania. And that's going to be, on paper, like, taken into, if you assume that even Vasquez is at a decent level by then, I'd trust Penta to carry, like, a brush to a good match. He's that AJ Styles type guy. But I'm very intrigued on how, aggressive this is going to be, because that match feels on paper like it's just going to be the 2 of them beating the living hell out of each other. And then it'll be interesting to see if they give Vasquez the sort of UFC treatment of the same way Ronda was, and the same way, like, anyone who transitions from, like, a inverted commas legitimate sport of beating Pentagon, because beating Pentagon at Triple Mania, probably in the last 12 months that he'll probably be with AAA, because I feel like the way AEW will go moving forward is either eventually exclusive contracts, or Pentagon and Phoenix will end up in Full Sail at the Performance Center. It feels like this is probably going to be his last Triple Mania. So it'll be interesting to see if they, have him leave on his back, or, give Vasquez the big rub, or if we're just going to see Vasquez lose but, look strong. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, I guess the All Elite thing is a very interesting part to this, because they have a quote-unquote now working relationship with AAA. If they continue that AAA relationship, does that open the door for Velasquez to have a show in AEW as well? Does that give AEW their first crossover star? I mean, everyone's had to have one in every wrestling promotion ever. Dating back to the early 90s when you had football players headlining WrestleManias against Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah. Oh, God. I remember before last year's Mania, I stupidly did a thing where I was off work sick for 3 days, like bedbound sick. So I watched every single WrestleMania, and then I did a little Twitter thread of, like, the main events. And it's the fact that for about the first, 5-6 years, King Kong Bundy versus Hogan in a cage was the best match. And I was just like, oh, it's hard to go back and watch wrestling without, being there at the moment. But it's even harder to go back and watch late 80s, Hulk Hogan walking around oiled up, dropping a leg drop, brother. And I'm just like, oh, God. So, yeah, Bam Bam Bigelow versus, I'll get Vietnam flashbacks.
Yeah, so the second biggest thing at the moment is these Lucha Underground contracts and the future of Lucha Underground. I didn't really write that in my note, but it's an interesting point to put together. Lucha Underground in a bit of a pickle at the moment. There's no guarantee that season 5 is even coming or whatever, but in recent weeks, there's been a host of pro wrestlers. One the biggest being El Hijo del Fantasma, who goes by the name of King Cuerno in Lucha Underground. You also got Joey Ryan, Ivelisse, and who's the other one I'm forgetting?
Texano Jr. and Cobra Moon.
That's right.
At the last.
Yeah, Cobra Moon. Yeah. Yeah, so because that contract is so shit, did I read probably that they were given $4,000 a year from Lucha Underground for that? and they weren't allowed to take any other TV
Yeah.
bookings.
It was $4,000 a year, which, when you think about how much independent wrestlers can make now, is mental. I think it's below minimum wage when you broke down how many hours they worked. But on top of that, they weren't allowed to work for 9 months for major televised companies. 9 months after the final episode of the season aired. But because they're recorded with a 9-month tape delay, it meant that they weren't allowed to work for, ROH, New Japan, All Elite, WWE, NXT for 18 months after they signed, after they last wrestled for Lucha Underground, which is mental. When WWE are doing less restrictive no complete clauses than you, then you're doing something wrong. It pretty much left, I think it led to Joey Ryan starting bar wrestling, if I'm right, because he just wanted somewhere that he could wrestle. So he started his own promotion, as well as that, I feel like it helped MLW a lot. As someone who's only recently started watching it, it seems like after all these people signed for Lucha Underground, it was then like, well, where can we work? MLW, OTT, there was quite a restrictive pool of choice. And it kind of takes some reflection when you look at, obviously we cover NXT UK on the developmental podcast. Yeah. That's our thing. And they've now got new, more restrictive contracts where they can't. It's a whole thing where my dog barks and interrupts, and they don't like NXT contracts. But the new thing is that they can't wrestle on televised or on-demand matches against people who have contracts for other companies. So theoretically, Pentagon Jr. couldn't have a match with Pete Dunne on Progress because, it's a conflict of interest or things like that. They can be in a match together, so they could be on opposing sides of a tag team or on the same tag team. But the whole of wrestling and contracts right now is kind of just proving that time-old thing that wrestlers will sign anything you put in front of them. So, I think all wrestlers, when they start, should get given their first set of those trainee wrestler boots that everyone gets and a lawyer to read contracts, because these Lucha Underground contracts have just stalled so many careers. Like you said, King Cuerno was touted to be being wanted by both New Japan and WWE, but they couldn't do anything, and then his heat dies down, as Lucha Underground has kind of died as well. I really enjoyed it. I thought it did a wonder of good for the careers of a lot of guys. But in my opinion, I think it's time for it to die.
Look, the first couple of seasons of Lucha Underground, I thought were some of the best things on wrestling TV. That was perfect. Ordered a couple more weeks each per season. But, something really creative, something totally different, like Prince Puma, one of my favorite characters there. The Penta and Vampiro feud there, and all that, so good.
Oh,
and
so good.
The killing of the boss and all that sort of stuff. These stories, I'm these are cool stories and stuff. And Cobb as Matanza, man, some of these characters, that put Cobb on the map, and Jeff Cobb is now one of the biggest talents on the independent circuit in the world.
Yeah.
But like you said, $4,000 for that is pretty much slave labor. And like you said, these indie guys. I mean, I know you're not a big fan of the Bucks, but they can make easily $10,000 to $20,000 a night just in merch and autographs and that at a show.
And merch alone. Yeah.
They came to Sydney about 2 years ago now, and we had our Comic-Con. It was on a Saturday. We had a Comic-Con on, and House of Hardcore, Tommy Dreamer's thing, had a show on that night. And they didn't realize at the time that there was a Comic-Con on during the day in the same vicinity. So they were hey, let's open signing up booths in the actual in the Comic-Con. And Young Bucks had a line bigger than freaking Green Arrow, and they had this huge line, and it was $20 for a photo, $20 for an autograph, and that line, they did that for 2 days straight. they would have easily made like $10,000 just by sitting there signing autographs, taking photos. Like independent wrestlers, if you're good and know how to market, and you can make a lot of money. So yeah, holding them down to $4,000 for a year for that is ridiculous. But I agree with you that Lucha Underground unfortunately does need to die, because Lucha Underground is one of the same of AAA. Like it's not AAA, but it's run by the same guys. Deep down. Yeah. Imagine if they put that creativity and that mindset into AAA.
Oh, it'd be fantastic. Like, I feel like Lucha Underground has given a lot to the mainstream wrestling world. So the off season is a very interesting idea that is kind of being taken forward, and a lot of wrestling fans and wrestlers have said they would love an off season, time to let their body recover, reduce injuries, go hard, like 10 months, 9 months of the year, have breaks in between. I think the idea of like a more televised dramatic show was kind of like taken from it. And to kind of segue onto the Raid the Reyes review, the section involving Cody coming out and being, attacked by Black Taurus, that felt a little Lucha Underground to me. It felt a little traditional, but like I feel like it was like one exploding like car in the background away from being like a Lucha Underground segment. So, Lucha Underground's done a lot, but go let these people wrestle elsewhere, because I really want Shane Strickland in WWE for one, and I really want Pentagon to be able to come and wrestle for a lot more indie promotions over here, because I've been determined to get a photo and some merch of him and Phoenix. So I'm having to trek to Liverpool, which is like the Glasgow of England, in that it's not a great area to go in, and also it's like a £70 each way train fare, so like $200 to get there, $100 for a hotel.
Oh, wow.
But then I'll get my photo and I'll meet Pentagon in Phoenix, and then I'll see Pentagon versus Pac, and then I'll go home and I can relax that he can go do whatever he wants, because I was worried he was going to sign a no complete cause with AEW before I got the chance to meet them.
Yeah.
So yeah. So do you want to go into the Raid the Reyes review? You can open up with you can be the positive one about the opening match of Raid the Reyes.
Well, yeah, like you said, it was a perfect segue talking about the Cody thing. So yeah, Raid the Reyes 2019. It happened nearly 2 weeks ago now, but it was so big, and everything that happened needs to be reviewed. It needs to be talked about. It was a huge show. Parts were amazing, parts were interesting, parts were eye-opening. I thought one or two people were going to die. Superfly, thank God he can even walk. Yeah.
Yeah, that was horrible.
But yeah, look, let's start with the AAA Mixed Tag Team Championship. Big Mummy Nino Hamburguesa, I can never pronounce that properly, defeating Lady Maravilla and Villano the Jr. Like you said, I'm going to be the voice of positivity, because one out of these four human beings just do not belong.
Don't be so mean to Villano Jr.
Well, actually, he's not bad. I mean, he's lost in a shuffle of Villano names, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's like two other different Villano 3 juniors on CMLL. That's really confusing me at the moment.
It's horrendous.
And there's about 7 original ones, and yeah, that's the most confusing family in Mexico, but that's another story.
Absolutely.
I kind of love the storyline with Nino and Maravilla. It's kind of like he's crushing on this, this younger luchador, but he's impressive for a big guy. I got to give him that. He's actually really impressive for a big guy. There's a couple of spots where you're like, how did he do that? Like, he's such a big man, and it's just, I don't know, like...
Oh, the tope to the outside, where everyone's outside, and he proper, like, cannibal topes through the top and middle rope with the assistance of the referee, obviously. But yeah, I agree with you in that I actually enjoy the story being told here. You know, Lady Maravilla trying to like seduce Hamburgo to like join her and do her bidding, and Big Mami coming in to stop it. You know, Lady Maravilla getting her comrades. You know, it's a good story. My problem with this match was like you said, it was one of the 4 don't belong, and like Big Mami just looked very clunky, and like the main one I noticed, and this is a really weird thing to criticize a wrestler for, but her footwork was really weird. It looked like she was going to fall over everything all the time, and it gave me like real anxiety watching the match. Yeah, like you'll next time she's performing, you'll watch it, and it always looks like she's going to trip over. And you know, obviously the story continues after the match, where Big Mami picks up the win by hitting a tilt-a-whirl sidewalk slam on Villano Trez Jr., wordy name, because Hamburgo refuses to hurt his precious Lady Maravilla. They get the pin after the big splash from Hamburgo, which, to be fair, looks like it would hurt. And rather than collecting his title and standing tall in the ring with Big Mami, Hamburgo ignores the title, grabs Lady Maravilla. The ref kind of throws the title onto him, and he takes her to the back with a romantic kiss cam over them. It was funny. It continued the story, but I like my openers to be. I'm always a fan of put a strong in-ring match as the opener and put the story stuff in the middle. So that's kind of what struggled it for me. I'm intrigued to see where the story's going to go. But at the same time, I hope that isn't a Big Mami singles match anytime soon.
No, I'm just interested to see where it goes. I don't think it goes anywhere further than being an opener story, but it's an interesting one. And like you said, I would have liked to have seen a really strong match opening up the show. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the main guys that they would use in the opening segment or opening match were part of the Rumble thing later on in the night. So but yeah, I guess the next segment after that match was probably one of the, 3 or 4 bigger segments of the night. So we had Cody come out, had a really funny interview with Hugo Savinovich. Wasn't it hilarious when he's trying to he's doing the Mexican translations for the audience whenever Cody's talking, but then Cody says something in Mexican, and then he repeats it in Mexican back. No, was it like an English thing? Like it was something I just I looked at Hugo and just went, I think you just buggered that up, man.
Yeah. It was what was even better. So I was watching it with, like I said, Spanish commentary first. So I had no idea what half of what was being said in responses. But it was when it was like, we're gonna have, guys like Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho here in Mexico, and he's like, his face turns into a child, and he's like, Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, who else? I was just sat there, I was like, oh. And obviously they give the announcement that he's going to be the Spanish correspondent for AEW. And I don't know, I've not looked into it, but I feel like he wasn't told that beforehand, other than it being mentioned, because he looked like a child. It was fantastic.
I don't think he was. I don't think he did know. I think he legit looked like he was shocked.
Yeah. So from there, obviously everyone's doing they're like, oh, we're getting excited for AEW, this working relationship. And then out comes Black Taurus and his Rudo accompaniment to attack Cody Rhodes, make a stamp, show that this is their ring. Conan's out because that's how you get heat with Western audiences, is use Conan. And, it's beaten down. Cody does his ensemble of the 6 moves of doom of Cody Rhodes at the moment, which are 6 moves that his family did. It's a nice moment. The Mexican crowd are eating it up, which was interesting. Mexican crowd reacted very well to Cody Rhodes, but later on in the night, when the tag team that appear, they don't get a reaction, and it was very odd. But Black Taurus hits the big spear, and, well, I feel like it should be a gore, but we'll go with spear, and out come all of the Technicals to make the save. You got Cycle Clown, Aerostar, Taya Valkyrie. Everyone beats up the Rudo stable, chases them to the back, poses with Cody Rhodes. It's a nice wee moment for the fans in attendance.
Yeah, well, I think that segment, more than anything, put over both Taurus and Psycho Clown. Like, with Psycho Clown.
Oh, absolutely.
Standing tall there with all the Technicos, and then Taurus being able to spear Cody like that made him look so fucking cool. And that was the first part of the night that he looked awesome. We'll talk about that when we get to the Reyes match. But I love that. Like, I love Conan coming out. No pun intended, keeping it 100. Coming out, with his boys by his side, just like, don't fucking come into my ring and say you're going to organize shit without coming through me. And I love that.
It was so
but
good.
there is an odd booking part with this, because something that will happen later in the night, which we'll talk about.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey everyone, just want to take a second to tell you about one of our new sponsors, Outbreak Nutrition. Outbreak Nutrition are creating supplements for survival, sharper minds, quicker reflexes, all the energy you need to take your performance to the next level, whether that be on the field, in the gym, on the gaming field. That's right, they have specifically designed gaming supplements as well to help you focus on those late night sessions. They even sell coffee, you guys, at Outbreak Nutrition. You can get coffee pods, you can get coffee beans, you can get supplements for the bedroom as well if you want to enhance your performance there. These are performance enhancing supplements for every aspect of your life, specifically designed by gamers, for gamers, to stay fit and healthy in the gym, to stay sharp and focused on the game, and to dominate in all areas of life. So check out OUTBREAKNutrition.com, and for being a listener of our podcast, they will give you 10% off your order when you enter the code B+. That is BPLUS at checkout. So make sure, if you want to stay on top of your game, if you want to take your performance to the next level, OUTBREAKNutrition.com, enter the code B+ at checkout. Alright guys, just before we get started, I want to take a second to tell you about a game I've been playing on my iPhone. You can get it on iPhone, you can get it on Android, all the tablets and what have you. It is called the Muscle Hustle app. They are good friends of the show, and they were hooking us up with codes to sort of help you guys get ahead if you were to decide to play the game. But unfortunately, in the latest software updates with iTunes and what have you, the codes aren't working. So we're trying to get that fixed. But in the meantime, if you click the link in the show notes and download the Muscle Hustle, it's a fantastic game. It's you collect wrestlers and train your wrestlers up, all with unique individual gear and everything to raise them through the ranks from jobber to superstar to legend. You go around collecting the titles, and you can even play with your friends. So unfortunately, no leg up to offer you, but if you hit the link in the show notes, it will let them know that we sent you, and it'll help us out, it helps them out, and it helps you out because it's a really fun game to play. So check out the Muscle Hustle app on iOS, Android, and all your mobile devices. The link, of course, is in the show notes.
Still weirds me out that, like, I watch B nearly religiously. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a all elite mark. I watch it religiously, and they cheekily joked about it on this week's episode. They kind of joked about, discussed, like, Kenny sort of asked him, like, why didn't you go help Cody out? Like, where were you guys?
Yeah.
And they sort of played it like, oh, we needed to have our pop later in the night. And Kenny's like, the pop? Like, what pop? and I'm like, wow. So I'm like, okay, that explains why they didn't come out, because they wanted that pop. But yeah, when we get to the main event part, we'll discuss it in full. But yeah, it's very interesting how one is Technico and one is Rudo, but they're the same.
It's very odd, and it led us. My main thing is, I'm assuming, because I don't always keep up to date with, like, I don't watch Being the Elite. It's not for me. Like, it's impressive what they've done with it, but it's just not for me. But as far as I was aware, does Cody have a match for Double or Nothing yet? Because this felt like they were building to something between him and Black Taurus.
Well, he's got a match. They haven't revealed who it is. Like a couple of episodes ago, they had Brandy in there with him, and she goes, "Are you sure you want to face this guy?" And he's just like, "Yeah, I'm sure." But they've blacked out the face, and no one knows. Everyone's sort of suggesting it's going to be something like a Dustin Rhodes or uh, someone else from the past or something. But yeah, this kind of looked like it's set up for a future match there. I'd love to see that. Taurus would rip his head off.
Oh, absolutely. And from one brutal segment to another, we get the 4-way street fight between Lady Shani, I'm going to try and get these all right, Kira, Cheek Tormenta, and who have I forgotten? Forgetting someone.
Lahidra?
Yeah, Lahidra, yeah. The one that I was not going to pronounce well, that's the one I forgot. This was a nice match. Good high-paced, all-out action for me. The highlight for me on second watch last night was realising, like I said to you before we started recording, that Tessa was chatting shit to them all in the chat on the Twitch stream. I think that was nice. I'd love to see Tessa Blanchard tear it up with, Lady Shani or Cheek Tormenta. Be interested to see. I don't know about you. The highlight for me was the Spanish fly to the outside.
Oh.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Kira hits a lovely sort of Hurricane Rana into a drop kick with a chair onto Cheek Tormenta. For me, one of the highlights of the first half of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. That Spanish fly through the table was just a thing of beauty. I'm like, what the hell? Like, three of these, I'll just say divas. Fuck, we've got to stop using that word these days, don't we? Three of these reinas, the luchadoras, I've seen multiple times. Shani, Hydra, and Kira. I haven't seen much of Tormenta before this, but yeah, all four of them were fantastic. Love the Tessa talking trash in the Twitch chat. I'd love to see something with Tessa and Lady Shani. Lady Shani is so impressive. Man. I really love Lady Shani. I think she's cool. A lot of good spots. It's a great match to showcase that the Luchadoras are one of the best women's divisions out there. They don't get the credit that they deserve. The girls in Japan get more love. The British girls, even where I am, the Australian girls, they get a lot of love. Mexican girls just don't, and it's when you get girls like Selena's and those sort of girls tearing up in the US as well, it's like, man, like there's a lot of good women down in Mexico. You should keep keeping an eye on them.
Yeah. So after the match, we move on to lots of fun to pronounce names. We get El Poder del Norte, Cata Brava Jr., Moco Cota Jr., and Tito Santana defeating Los Perros del Mal, the team of Daga, Drew Leider, and Taya. Obviously, the reunion of Daga and Drew Leider, formerly of Perros del Mal. But unfortunately, that reunion was cut short. Daga, who I'm excited to say is coming to Progress for Super Strong Cell 16, so I'll be getting to see him live, and I'm very excited about that. Betrayed Joe Leider, hitting him with a chair and leaving him and Taya to the hands of Poder del Norte. Kind of setting up a Triple Mania match between Daga and Leider. I really enjoyed this match, but it was obviously there for story purposes more than anything else. But
yeah,
what about yourself?
I love Poder del Norte. They're cool. They are fun to watch, especially I think it's Moco Cota Jr. They're all three of them are really impressive. Yeah, it's sad that Daga's not going to be representing the Perros de Mel now, but it's going to be a great story nonetheless. Los Perros has such an interesting history. It's something I'd love to do on a future cast is talk about Perros de Mel because it's such an interesting history between the promotion and the actual stable itself. Obviously dating back to probably about 2006, 2007. It's such a cool stable. I just loved it. Yeah, I hope to see a Daga Joe Lita match at Triple Mania. I think that's where it'll lead to. But Daga's got so much to go. Like he's got so much on around the world. Um, it's just there's not a lot of room for him to do a lot of storyline stuff in Triple H. Because like you said, he's all over the place. He's doing Progress. He's in Dragon Gate. He's all over the place. He's in MLW. He's wrestling there on Mania weekend. So he's a busy man. But yeah, I'm keen for a leader Daga match at Triple Mania for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. After the match, Taya gets attacked by Kira, Lady Maivia, and Tormentor, who now looks to be a Comadres member. And then Fabi Apache comes out to make the save, probably setting up something between Taya, Apache, and Lady Shani versus Maivia, Tormenta, and Kira. Interesting to see where that goes. Taya Valkyrie's an interesting character for me. Fantastic in ring, but I don't know about you. When she does the whole sort of dread thing, I'd get distracted watching the dreads move, or the cornrows. But yeah, after that we get Inferno, Chessman, and Superfly, who I was about to say rest in peace, legit nearly dies about 3 times in this match. One point in particular, which I'm sure we'll touch on, defeating Drago, Pagano, and Puma King. I mean, the first thing to talk about is Inferno in the hilarious Batman costume. It was lovely. But yeah, I'll let you talk to a little bit about the horrible Puma King Superfly incident, because if I talk about it, I'm gonna get flashbacks.
Yeah, I'm gonna get flashbacks as I talk about it too. Like it legit scared me that I thought he was gone. I was like, I've watched way too many like life-ending injuries in wrestling, and I hate it. I hate it watching it. This is just sickening to watch. Even like Vampiro, like straight away is just like, oh shit, like, and he's a talent relations guy, so that he left the table, announce table immediately. Like he went off, and but it wasn't just him. It was a chessman that took that bump off the top rope, and it looked like through the table, and it looked like he dislocated his shoulder. It was a messy match. It's fun because Puma King is one of my favorite guys in the entire world. I love Puma King. Drago as well, Pagano. Yeah,
superb.
Inferno, Chessman, and Superfly. They're a little bit more of that aging guys. Like they're not the super young, flashy guys that some of the other ones are. Most of them, especially Chessman and Superfly, have been around for a good 15, 20 years. Chessman was I think Chessman was in WWE in the mid-90s or something. So they've been around for ages, a little bit older, but that Sunset Powerbomb, it just scared the shit out of me, man. I'm like,
Superfly just clips the back of his head on the edge of the table. You can tell that I think everyone in the match was concerned, because very shortly after that we get the finish of Verno pinning Drago to continue their little feud. And you just it's horrible to watch. Like the match is enjoyable, but it's kind of tainted. You don't go and watch the match, but just be warned, it's a difficult watch because of that spot. What wasn't a difficult watch, however, was the K match between Mamba Maximo and one of my favourite performers of Triple A, Psycho Clown, defeating Killer Cross, La Mascara, and Double J, GFF, JARRET, Jeff Jarrett, in a match that, when you tell people was on Triple A 2 weeks ago, you get a lot of confused faces. Quite an interesting match. That's for sure.
Interesting is the right word. Yeah, this contained two of my most favorite wrestlers on the planet in Psycho Clown and Killer Cross. Killer Cross is one of my favorite bad guys in the world. He is, not only is he dating one of the most amazing human beings in the world.
I was just thinking the exact same thing. I was like, he is tall, ripped to shreds. He's got the tattoo look. and also he's got Scarlett Bordeaux, whose gimmick of like the diva, like the eyepiece that hates the fact that everyone just thinks he's an eyepiece, is like the perfect. Like when you see someone backstage, you're like, yes, I will believe you're a heel. He also, me and him have got one of the same, the original Undisputed Era logos, like the Volknut, the three overlapping triangles. So I have that as a tattoo, and it's an old Nordic tattoo. It's got a lot of meaning. But like 2 years ago, like a really small sort of white supremacy group started using it as their logo, at which point I completely shat myself, right? Because all of a sudden I'm like, people are going to think I'm a white supremacist. And then with Undisputed Era using it, Killer Cross having a tattoo, a bunch of other famous people started using it as logos. Now when you Google it, that it doesn't mean that anymore. Like it's back to its original meaning, and I was like, Killer Cross is eternally a technical to me for that. Quite a simple story in this match. Jeff Jarrett's the first to escape, easy payday, get him out of the match, because I had to sit and watch him wrestle Grado at ICW, and given that Grado's not even the best wrestler, that match was painful to watch. So Jeff gets out of the stage, starts humiliating Brazo de Plata, who was giving moral support. Psycho Clown gets out, shoos Jeff Jarrett away, and then does the sensible thing, which is always remember playing steel cage matches on WWE games, like the tag team ones. And you didn't want to be the first person to escape, because then your team's in a handicap match. So Psycho Clown climbs back in the cage, fights away. Eventually everyone escapes the cage except for Mascara and Psycho Clown, and their brawl for the finish was fantastic. Mascara takes Psycho Clown's mask off, puts it over his own head, starts climbing out. Maximo sneaks another mask to Psycho Clown, now with his identity protected, stops Mascara, drags his pants down, power bombs him from the top of the cage, climbs out. The Technicals win the match, and it was like Psycho Clown is phenomenal. Like when you watch him, the problem I always had at first was his gimmick looked stupid. He was part of a posse of clowns. Like, how do you explain to someone that that's actually really good? But he's just so smooth in ring that it just carried for me. Interesting to see what you think of Maximo, because I'm not the biggest fan.
No, I'm not a big Maximo fan. Like, he's interesting. I agree wholeheartedly with Psycho Clown. He's so phenomenal. He's got so much energy. I just love it. And that ending with Psycho Clown and Mascara, like, how fun would it be to be wrestling on? I mean, there's plenty of family, like brothers and all that over the years, but how fun is it just beating your cousin up, inside a cage like that? That family link there between Maximo, Psycho Clown, and La Mascara was interesting. Yeah, I'm coming around to Maximo. I'm starting to sort of like him. It's taking me a while, because I feel like I need to get into him, because it's like he's had a lot of good shit in his career. I'm like, I don't know why I've never got into him, but slowly coming around.
What's interesting is I tried to show my co-host Deo, and I tried to show him some Lucha Libre. So we sat down, I showed him a CMML show. He quite enjoyed it. It was like, I could watch this, but I couldn't binge watch 5 hours of it, because it can get quite samey. And I was like, fair enough. So then I was showing him I can't remember what show it was, but it was Maximo tagging with, I assume, Mamba against a team of Rudos. And they actually quite enjoyed him. He was like, for a bigger guy, he understands how to be funny while being a serious wrestler. But also, he's decent enough at ring. And I just remember watching it and going, his hair really annoys me. I can't take this guy seriously. But, he's not for me. He's done a lot in his career, which, like you said, I'm the same. Makes me feel like I need to go back and watch it. But it's kind of hard to get into. But it does lead us on to, for me, match of the night. The AAA Raid the Rays tournament between, right, here we are. There's going to be a lot of names here. Oh, they're all easy to pronounce, kind of. Aerostar Laredo Kid, Hijo del Valquino, Jack Evans, Sammy Guevara, Black Taurus, Golden Magic, Miz Tease, and Eclipse Vendigor Jr. I'm going to breathe for a bit, so you take us into the match while I get my breath back after that. Whoa.
Yeah, I'm guessing there was supposed to be somebody else in this match, i.e. Superfly, and I think due to him not being able to walk, was taken out of this. And I don't know anything about this Eclipse Vengador Jr. character. That's something totally new. I don't know if this is a new character built because of the new TV deal that they've got, something kind of new. But the MVP of this was Toro. Like, he was the MVP of this match, hands down. Next to Vikingo and Aerostar obviously winning it. The Black Taurus, he was the absolute MVP in this match. Just tearing through the middle of that pack, just wiping them all out. And I'm just like, fuck, he's so cool. Like, I saw him like maybe a year or two ago. I'm like this guy, he's going to be something. I just don't know if it's going to translate into more of a bigger thing, but fuck, he's so entertaining, Toro. Then all the other guys, the real famous luchas, not famous, the real traditional luchas, the Aerostars, the Hijo del Vikingos, the Jack Evans, those sort of guys who flip about like I've never seen people move like this, and it's just it was a fantastic match. I love it. More things need to happen where the title is a fucking sword.
Yes, absolutely. Fun fact: when I was at studying first year of studying business, we had to prepare a business plan. And obviously, if you're going to write about a business plan, you've got to make it something you enjoy. So I did the idea for starting a wrestling promotion. And in it, I broke down where our sources of income would come from. But one of them was a pay-per-view called King of the North. And the title was a sword. So when I saw this, I was like, my idea, it has come to life. It is, yes, this is, Jack Evans in this match, and then any Jack Evans match, he's one of the most underrated guys. In terms of, he's never had a massive amount of respect held to his name, but he is a superb performer. Everyone has lovely things to say about him. When people talk about who got them into that style, cruiserweight, lucha libre, junior heavyweight wrestling, whatever you want to call it, wherever you're from, whatever you watch, he is fantastic. And Aerostar picks up the win. Aerostar is another one who's been announced for Progressive Super Strong Style 16. So I'm very excited that he's coming in with a lot of momentum. I was telling Di that he is really good, and he was saying that he had heard mixed feedback. But he looked really strong in this match. But yeah, like you said, Black Toro is just tearing everything up to the point that Vikino, Aerostar, and Laredo Kid had to team up to get rid of him. The finish to this match with Aerostar blocking, Laredo Spanish Fly, hitting a superb front cracker, and then the rolling ace cutter. Superb moment, good crowd reaction, which is hard to get given what's about to come up. Yeah, I really enjoyed this match. Really enjoyed the actual tournament. I'm the same as you. I don't actually know much about Eclipse Vendigor Jr. either. Or I assume Eclipse Vendigor don't know much about either. I'm not familiar with that family line. But yeah, really good match. And it leads on to the AAA Tag Team Championship match. But the first one, not the one everyone talks about. We get Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. defeating the champions going into this, Texano Jr. and Rey Escorpion. At first I was very confused, because this match goes about 7 minutes in a main event. And the Lucha Bros just dominate it for most of the match. Phoenix takes out Rey Escorpion with a tope, Penta pins Texano, and they win the title, and I'm like, that's it. And as the resident Elite fan on this podcast, I'll let you talk about what happened next, because I think you'll be far more enthusiastic than I was.
Yeah, well, I was enthusiastic because I was watching it, and it was about 1 a.m. And I made myself not read any spoilers or watch any spoilers. And when that happened, I kind of marked out like a kid. I'm like, holy shit, the Young Bucks are in Mexico actually doing something. Like, this is crazy. Like, I kind of thought it was happening because of the Being Elite episode. They kind of teased them packing their boots and their tights in a bag and with a passport. I'm like, where are they heading? And there was actually a chance that they were heading down under because a couple of the All Elite guys were here in Sydney the same weekend. I was like, are they coming to Sydney? Or are they coming to Mexico? This is cool. But yeah, when they showed up there, yeah, like I said earlier, so obviously, yeah, so like Phoenix and Pentagon beat Rey Scorpion and Texano Jr. for the title. Then Conan comes out. Sorry, the lights go off. Comes back in the ring with Conan, with the Young Bucks there. Out of nowhere, we get another tag team championship match, and the Young Bucks defeat Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. And I should say, the match between these guys was actually really good. If this is a little teaser of what we're going to get at Double or Nothing, then give me more, because I want to see this feud play out all year. I don't care what ring it is.
Oh,
I know Young Bucks aren't everyone's cup of tea, and that's fair enough. But when they get into a ring with guys like Phoenix and Penta, I've seen these guys tangle it up at PWG before. They have special chemistry with teams, and they have a chemistry with these guys, and I want to see more of it. But yeah, so technically the Young Bucks are heel in AAA, and Cody is face.
yeah. It's an odd situation where Conan. I kind of get the Conan link, right? Because obviously within AAA has his role, but also he's feuding with the Lucha Bros within Impact, so that's continuity there. But also more so, he gets brought in when someone is not known that well in Mexico, and he's really good at getting them heat. And he was used here to get the Young Bucks, like, try and get a reaction, because there was just none. I've never seen a Meltzer driver get no reaction. But it just kind of proves that maybe this working relationship is more will actually benefit AEW a lot more than it will AAA, because getting a lot of these talented Mexican guys over will really help sell their in-ring product. Whereas with the exception of Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, it seems like a lot of the Western guys AEWs might not be known by the AAA audience. But yeah, it was a moment where I was like, oh, this is a big deal. This is impressive. And I was like, oh, does this mean I'm going to have to watch the Young Bucks whenever I want to watch AAA? Because it's my getaway place from that type of wrestling. But nope, got the announcement that the AAA titles are on the line at all our Double or Nothing. It's going to be a fantastic match. I don't fault the Young Bucks in-ring work. They're superb, if a little repetitive is the only criticism I could give them, but they've really stepped it up since the Wrestle Kingdom match against Roppongi 3K. It's more the what do you call it? Like the backstage stuff and the, cease and desist stuff just kind of got on my head. But I'm fantastically excited for that match. Yeah. So,
yeah,
overall, it's fantastic. I don't know if you want to quickly talk about last week's CMLL Friday show, just anything interesting happened, then we can wrap up, because we're getting to...
So, last week we had LA Park finally return to CMLL on the Monday show, which for me, they shows on Tuesday, which gets awkward, but the CMLL Monday show, LA Park returned. I love LA Park. He is one of the best 50-plus-year-old guys in the business today. The stuff that he is doing in MLW, and this is a real LA Park, by the way, not the fake one that AAA like to give us. The LA Park in CMLL and the one that's in Major League Wrestling is tearing it up. He is doing some of the best work in his life. He has a death match against Jimmy Havoc in MLW next week at Mania weekend. I'm so excited.
Oh, really?
For that. Yeah.
Oh, that is going to be fantastic.
Yeah. And then somehow he's also in the Major League Wrestling Battle Royal, the Battle Riot. I don't think he's going to be able to walk after Wrestling Havoc in deathmatch. LA Park, and he's his get-ups in CMLL with his like outfits and that, because he can't wear the black and white LA Park stuff in Mexico, he mixes it up a little bit with like the red outfits or whatever. I love when he mixes it up. He looks so fucking cool.
He possibly has the coolest like costume design in wrestling like ever. Like the whole La Park, LA Park, La Parka 2, La Parka, LA Park. It's like the Pentagon thing where whenever I speak to Diane Innes about Pentagon, he's like, "Oh, is it Pentagon Noir this week? Pentagon El Pento Nero Zero Noir?" And I'm like, "Just Pentagon. Say Pentagon and you're safe."
Yeah. Yeah, no, he is so cool. So he returned. He tagged up with his son, El Hijo de El Park, and his nephew, Volador Jr. They took on the Los Guerreros. I love Ultimate Guerrero, by the way. He's one of my favorite dudes in all of Lucha. With Gran Guerrero and Euphoria, they got that win. Yeah, I love seeing LA Park back in Mexico. He is awesome. Then on Tuesday at the New Values show in Arena Mexico, Dragon Lee, who has a huge match in Ring of Honor and New Japan, I guess, next weekend at the Madison Square Garden, he defeated Mephisto for the CMLL World Welterweight title. Mephisto had held that title for 1,050 days. He won that in 2016 from Grand Metalik, which is crazy to say.
You
so
don't
Dragon
get
Lee
reigns
took
like that anymore. That is mental.
Yeah. I mean, he defended it 18 times over those 3 years, but it's a long reign. But yeah, the Dragon Lee, he already holds the lightweight title, which he's had that for 1,118 days. So he's got 2 titles around his waist from CMLL. He has a chance to pick up a third at Madison Square Garden, where he could win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight from Taiji Ishimori and Bandito in that triple threat, which is just going to be phenomenal. So he could walk out of MSG with 3 belts around his waist. And then I read a little promo today that he wants to be a belt collector of Mexico. So it looks like he's going to start trying to take some CMLL titles and look like Ultimate Dragon.
I was going to say that's the instant thought was the 15 title Ultimo Dragon. Oh, phenomenal!
I would love to see a wrestler do that. Like, I know Austin Aries rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and rightfully so. But when he started holding a lot of those titles, I'm like, yes, I want to see someone collect titles and go around the world and pick up all these titles and get a photo shoot of him with 10 titles around his arm. Like, I want to see that. Dragon Lee would be the perfect.
See, oddly, Australia and Austin Aries linked for me because one of my friends, Charlie, he stayed in Brisbane for the last 6-7 years, and he's just moved back home. But while he was over there, he went to a wrestling show with Austin Aries in the main event, and halfway through the match, Austin Aries just starts cutting a promo on the crowd, and just storms off. And it was like, what? It was like, yeah, that was my Austin Aries experience. And I was like, I once saw a fan bring him a banana, and he threw it away, and he went, "I'm not a performing monkey." And I was just like, oh, you're such a nice guy. Oh, but yeah, I'm the same as you. I enjoyed the look at all the belts, I'm really good sort of thing. And Dragon Lee Dragon Lee is phenomenal. I mean, Bandito and Ishimori and him will tear it up for that junior heavyweight title. For me, I've only watched the Friday show this week, which was a bit if we had more time I'd delve into it, but it's a bit but I really enjoyed the main event with Caristico, fantastic performer, Timo Volador Jr. And the biggest announcement from that show is that next week we are getting Los Ingobernables, including Naito, against the team of Technicos, including Caristico, and fantastic match. There's also going to be the Mexican light heavyweight title on the line. So what's things to look forward to on, I wouldn't say next Friday, tomorrow's show, so 3 a.m. Saturday for me, so it'll be a Saturday lunchtime viewing. But CMML's had quite a good week. You watch much Lucha elsewhere, like 205 or anything like that?
Yeah, a little bit. I've got to ask one question about CML. Have you seen, so 2 weeks ago at Homage to Two Legends on the Super Friday, 2 weeks ago, Angel De Oro and Niebla Roja defeated Terrible and Bestia for the hair? And Terrible and Bestia, they shaved their head. Do you know, like, sometimes when, like, someone loses their mask or something like that, their character goes from, like, amazing to even better? So, like, Almaz as La Sombra was one of the best guys. I love La Sombra.
Oh, so
Take
good.
that mask off, and you got one of the most handsome freaking Mexicans in the world in Almaz, all right? Terrible, they shaved his head, right? And he looked somewhere in between a mix-up of either Batista, Perry Saturn, or Carl Anderson, and he looks jacked and angry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is the best looking El Terrible I have ever seen. Like, he's got the shaved head, the short beard.
It just suits him so perfectly, Beforehand, with the long hair, it looks a bit mental, whereas now he looks like the sort of guy that you would cross the road to avoid. And he's one of those people that, like, imagine if Volador Jr. lost his hair. You just can't imagine it.
Yeah.
He just looked like a little egg. But, it was fantastic.
I will say this. I will hate the man who ever beats Roosh for his hair.
I was so disappointed that, because obviously it's Roosh versus Dalton Castle at G1 Supercard. And I was so sure they were going to make that a hair versus hair match. Like, it feels like the perfect, like, Dalton Castle, all about the look. Roosh with, like, the majestic hair, the Mexico background. But, no, Lucha Libre all around the world's taken over. Even shows like 205 Live, even main roster WWE, some of the most praised matches recently have been Andrade versus Rey, which I'm hoping is going to happen at Mania and isn't just going to be a little spot within the dreaded Andre the Giant This Means Nothing Battle Royal. So, yeah, it's been an interesting sort of 2 weeks. I've enjoyed having a chance to sit and talk about Lucha Libre, even if it has gone, an hour and 15 minutes, so it's a good time. We've had our nice introductions. I'm excited to see how Naito's going to do in the CMML show, and if they actually let it be a CMML show, or if they try and make it a super serious show because, we've got a New Japan guy on it. I guess the only guy, we mentioned this vaguely, the only guy set for Mania who is sort of in any way Lucha Libre is probably going to be Rey. It looks like Andrade will be on the pre-show. It looks like even the Cruiserweight titles, Buddy Murphy, Tony Nese, which isn't exactly sort of Lucha Libre. I was so sure it was going to be Humberto Carrillo, obviously formerly Ultimo Ninja, because they brought him in and had him pick up a win. He looked really good, and I was like, yeah, I could see this. And then they kind of bought Oney Lorcan versus Cedric Alexander going on. It's an interesting place for 205. Other than that, I've not. This has been a quiet week for me in sort of Lucha Libre. I've gone back and continued learning and reading more about different lineages. But yeah, I've got a fun day of podcasting ahead. It's 1:00 here. Gonna go have a bite to eat, and then I'm off to record for another wrestling podcast as a guest, and then I've got to record the developmental podcast tonight. So by the end of it, I'm going to be all wrestled out. So, I'm glad we got the Lucha Libre in early so I can convey my passion for the sport. But yeah, thank you very much for having me on this week.
No, hopefully we should be able to make this a regular thing. I hope this all goes well and people like it. I like it already. But yeah, no, it's been good. And like this first episode's gone a little bit long, but if we can get a bit of a regular, whether it's once a month or once every fortnight or something, trying to get an episode out, we should be able to smash out episodes between 30, 45 minutes easy. So, which is cool. But all right, I guess it's almost midnight here in Sydney, so I better stick a fork in it, and I think we're done. So if you want to discuss anything else, Lucha Libre or anything, you can find me at B+_big boy on Twitter and Instagram. Where can they find you, Mr. Liam?
So if you want to see my rants and raves about all the wrestling and just life in general, it's at Liam A. Stewart. And if you want to check out my podcast where I talk about the British scene and NXT UK, that's at Develop Podcast. So yeah, check it out. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to see where we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should also know that we collectively are the B+ Wrestling on Facebook and Instagram. We are the B+ Wrestle on Twitter because wrestling wouldn't fit. Like, share, subscribe, give us a 5-star review if you like what we do. And thank you so much for listening.
Hold one. Arm drag.
You're not doing this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon.
You just made the list.
So, no speak English.
Dummy. Yeah.
Goodbye and good night.
Hold two. Arm bar.
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
It's still real to me, damn it. Dummy. Yeah. Hold three. The moss covered. Three-handle family Granunzo.
Mamma mia!
It's me, Austin. It was me all along, Austin. Number 4, armbar.